All right. Well, as we continue to talk about the mission of God for the family and talk about the place that the family has in the broader story of what God is doing in the world and what God's intention for the world was, what God created Adam and Eve for and the human race for, and what it means to be a part of the restoration of the image of God and how the family fits into that. We've been talking about all of these things. And I want to uh, take a step into maybe an odd territory, and talk about the the second chapter of Saint of G.K. Chesterton's biography of Saint Francis of Assisi. And what he does is Chesterton says before we can talk about Saint Francis, we need to talk about the world that Saint Francis was born into and how it is that Saint Francis could be born into this particular place where there was this great flowering of the arts, flowering of literature, this immense uh, renaissance is what we end up calling it. This immense renaissance of the Middle Ages. What did it take to get from the barbarism of the Roman Empire, the kind of place that could crucify a person, right? Uh, the art, the the Romans had in a lot of ways. Fix my camera here. Realize that it was slowly tipping over. Right, so that the Roman Empire had really turned killing people, had turned death into a high art. They had gathered up all of the different means of death, the means of torture, all these different things. They'd really gathered them up and uh and perfected them. Well, you have something like crucifixion that seems like it would be uh, just an abominable. I mean, was it? It's an abominable practice, and they had turned it into a propaganda tool. That's what crucifixion was. You have somebody that opposes the Roman Empire. Well, they get crucified. You have a village that uprises. You crucify a bunch of people. Next thing you know, people aren't raising. They aren't. There's no more uprisings. It was a propaganda tool to as a way of saying we can kill you or we can and not just in the normal ways but in really really painful ways. We have the power of death at our fingertips, right? That's what the Roman Empire as an institution was communicating with the art of death, the way that they killed people by having them torn apart by lions. They killed them by crucifixion. They killed them by burning. They killed them in lots of different ways. And it was a way of saying, um, you're under our control because of death. Well, by the time you get to St. Francis, you have a completely transformed vision of reality, right? That reality is described in a different sort of way. So instead of the way that it was described by the Romans, as it was always out to get you, the gods were out to get you, nature was out to get you, everything is out to get you, and you are small, and unless mankind gathers together and uses its powers collectively to press back the death and the chaos that's always pressing in on us, everything falls apart. Right. And it's only that it's only when mankind gathers together with their own kind, that they can collectively press off the chaos and the death and the terror, um, because everything was out of their control individually. Well, to go from that to the world of the Renaissance, where you have the peace, the prosperity, you have the art, you have the great architectures, many of the greatest architectural feats of the mankind. You have some of the greatest spiritual minds of all of history, some of the great poets. You have this vision for not just an integrated cosmos, but an integrated cosmos with mankind as the uh, as the microcosm of all of it, right? That all of the universe was a macrocosm of the reflected mankind, and mankind reflected everything. You have this vision for a completely fully integrated cosmos, and mankind is somehow the peak or the microcosm of it all. That you have such a different vision of society that you think, how do you get from here to there, right? How do you get from that terror, the kind of terror that you have for the whole world trying to destroy you, that you literally make sacrifices to the sun and the moon in order to keep them at bay, to Mars, to the stars. You're making sacrifices because those are your those uh, are are monsters that will destroy you if you don't keep them fed. The two Saint Francis's most famous poem, "Brother Sun Sister Moon," right? The where to uh, the doxology, praise God from whom all blessings flow, praise him all creatures here below, praise him above ye heavenly hosts, right? So moving from the the terror of the wild animals, having to hold the wild animals at bay, to, hey, everyone, it's time for church, gather up, here we go. To move from the terror of we've got to make sacrifices to Mars, otherwise he'll mess up our planting and plowing, and our food won't come up. We've got to keep Mars at bay. We've got to keep Jupiter at bay, otherwise things will go wrong. To um, speaking to the heavenly host as if they are waiting for you to tell them what to do, right? How do you make that sort of transition? Well, the reality is it's the what we call often call the dark ages now. Really, it was uh the overcoming the dark ages. I think that'd probably be a better name for it, because the darkness, the fear, the fear that everybody was under came from the fact that they worshiped nature, and so nature uh, was turned had been turned into an enemy, right? By nature worship always ends up causing a rivalry between us and nature, right? So nature was out to get you, but it was because nature is on God's side. And so when you worship it instead of God, it rejects you. Well, you and the what had happened in the Roman Empire towards the fall of the Roman Empire. Same thing happened when the Greek Empire fell. Same thing happens really when any empire falls. You begin mixing up nature worship, because the state is failing you, and an empire usually requires worship of the state or some sort of statism. And when the state fails you, it's as if a god has failed you, and so you shift to the next thing that you think is, a society shifts to the next thing. And when an empire is built, it's built to hold the chaos of nature back. Um, that's why you believe you need an empire, is to hold back the chaos. But when it fails you, then you turn to that chaos, you turn to that nature, and you begin to worship it. And nature worship always ends up becoming infused and obsessed with sex and sexuality, right? Yeah, that somehow that is becomes seen as a way to hold nature off, or communicate with, commune with, become a part of the chaos of nature. And you and it always becomes homosexual, and is very strange to watch. But when nature, as a whole, becomes what you worship, then you have to find your connection to it and find your place within it, and see if there's a perch that you can find in order to gain some sort of power over it. And I do think that's why homosexuality comes to the fore at the end and the fall of an empire. And that, I mean, it is objectively true that homosexual behavior comes to the fore, becomes popular during the fall of an empire. We see that with every empire. It's my my theory as to why is because it gives you the illusion of power over nature because you're refusing um, to act according to nature and declaring that my will is going to give me a perch over nature. And that happened at the end of the Roman Empire, and you see that this crazy growth of the empire this sort of thing inside the empire. But then what ends up happening is uh, Christianity shows up on the scene and begins to take take the Roman Empire into itself, take the tribes outside the empire into itself. Christianity is a converting religion. It goes out and it converts all of these different tribes and nations, and it converts clans, and it converts imperial forces, imperial areas of the world, and begins to uh, purge all of the uh, odd obsession with sexuality. One of my favorite one of my favorite lines from Chesterton is he says, "The moment sex ceases to be a servant, it becomes a tyrant." Right? And what happens is the church really de tyrannizes the sexuality of mankind. When it shows up on the scene, it's a time uh it's a time um when it shows up on the scene, sex is really uh is a hugely overemphasized, or it's seen as magical, or it's seen as a part of worship, right? It's not in its proper place at all, and it has really come to tyrannize the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire much more than the tribes that it goes out to convert. Well, but what happens is um the the uh opposition to the natural use of human sexuality, um, with or opposition to the unnatural use to us. It, we don't have, because we don't see it in that context, because we are actually coming on the other side. We're at the beginning of the unnatural use as a society, where we there was years, centuries of the proper natural use. When we look at this at that movement, where you have all of the people deciding that they're going to remain virgins throughout their life, deciding to dedicate themselves to God, they're in the middle of a society that completely misuses all of it. And it's a part of the purging process to say it's not going to be a tyrant, right? Over us, the same sort of way that, the early Americans, the tax on tea was not unreasonable because of the amount, right? It was because the they had just dealt with all of the taxation without proper representation. And so they weren't upset about the amount of tea. It was the fact that it was a symbol of tyranny that they threw the tea overboard. Well, the world had been, or the West had been tyrannized by the unnatural use of sexuality. And so their uh, purging of that unnatural use was to say we can actually have a satisfying life without this tyrant at all. And so it was a sign to the people that were trying to use we're trying to restore sexuality to its proper use, when the church did that sort of thing. The same sort of way you have somebody in the, people in the church um, taking vows of poverty, and the church being a non-economic institution in under the Roman Empire. It's not because money itself is bad, but it was because uh, money was a tyrant, in that situation, and it was a sign the way that the church was living was a sign to the rest of the world and to the church that money wasn't intended to be a tyrant. Sex wasn't intended to be a tyrant. It's supposed to be a servant in its normal, natural use, and that purging process over a handful of generations made it made it so that it was possible to enter into some of really the golden age of chivalry, which was a part of that purging process, and into a Protestantism that was doing its best to restore the natural and normal use. Um, and I think it has been shown through history that that's actually a really it's a good and important thing. Now we'll see if we end up needing to return to some sort of purging process where the church says, it has to deal with some of these things corporately again. We don't know. We don't know what the future is going to hold, or if where we are in the cycles of things. But I think it's really important to see when we look back that the that it the New Testament didn't end the restoration of putting things right, but that through history and through the church's work, it's had to work generation upon generation upon generation to restore a right understanding of these things. That none of it was just snapped into place immediately, but that it took generations of faithfulness, faithful where you're at, to move the society of the church towards a good use of different things. In this case, the good use of the family and the marriage bed, um, and it is, which means that we don't have to think as perfectionists. How do I get everything in my family right away, right? We can look at our family and say, what's the one thing that we want to improve this year? What's the one thing, um, on the new year, you can sit down as a family, say, what do we want to work on as a family? Right? You don't have to be putting everything right all at once. All you have to do is be working towards getting things put right. When it's time to do the dishes, often I'll get there and I'll look at it and I think, man, this is overwhelming. There's so many dishes, and you end up not even starting. Whereas if you just pick up the first thing and wash it, stack it, pick up the next thing, wash it and stack it, you end up getting through a lot more dishes than if you say, what would be the ideal way to get dishes completed, to get the dishes completed as a whole, or right? We have to just be working on something, always working on something. And I think that mentality, we can see throughout history that is the mentality that the Spirit has taken with the restoration of things in the church. That it often takes generations to deal with something, because the Spirit is the Spirit is God, so he is long suffering with us, he's patient with us, and but he's also moving and changing God's people always towards the image of God. So I've always found that to be a really encouraging a really encouraging chapter. I really enjoy the stories of St. Francis. He's quite a character, and obviously the writing of G.K. Chesterton. But I think seeing that God didn't finish at the New Testament, but that he really continues to work with the people of God, is I think really encouraging, and is something that your family gets to be a part of. That restoration of the human race that God is doing through His Spirit. Your family gets to be a part of that. Amazing fun, and I mean, he does it because he enjoys it, and he invites us to be a part of the restoration because he likes it so much. He knows that we will be glad to get to be a part of it as well. So same thing, same reason he invites us to do evangelism. It's not because he needs us, but it's because of the joy that he has in one person, turning to him. He says, oh my gosh, you're going to love this. Come join me. You get to be a part the joyous work that God is doing in the world.